what's happening, everybody? Welcome our my new good friend who I met through another friend of mine, Scott Bourgeois. Scott, thanks for coming. Scott's a husband, father, Christ follower, anesthetist. There we go. I love that you put slightly above average age group triathlete.
Gotta be real.
Guide for
VI
athletes,
visually impaired,
which we're going to get to that in a second.
Yep.
And then addicted to movement and exercise. I've already figured that out. And 3 things I love that you could not give up were coffee, exercise, and your iPhone. Why not your iPhone, by the way?
I really like it a lot.
You're on it?
I'm on it quite a bit. It's one of my vices.
So, dude, I've planned hearing your story, getting into it. You're into a lot of things I love. I love the fact that you're just like constantly self-improvement. Tell me like we're going to get into fitness journey because you got some great stories. I mean, how many, by the way, real quick before we even jump into it, how many Ironmans have you done again?
Done 5 full Ironmans. Started when I was 40.
Which one was your hardest, by the way?
First one.
Which one?
2015, Ironman Texas, first one. Because you really don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And boy, it just hit me like a...
Have you done outside of Texas?
I've done Texas twice, Louisville once, and Florida twice.
Have you ever looked into, because I used to live in California on the West Coast, into the Alcatraz one?
I've actually done that twice.
You've done the Ironman?
It's not an Ironman. It's a different distance triathlon, but I've done that race twice. It's a great race.
But so I've just done. So I didn't swim across, but I took a ferry across, and I'm like, dude, whoever's doing this, like the waves and everything, like the choppiness,
crazy. Yeah, I got a good story about that one too. That was a lot of fun.
Well, tell us real quick.
Oh yeah. Back in the day, you had to get in with a lottery. And I entered in, and of course they picked me, and basically that just means you get to pay full price and go. And I talked to my wife. I was like, hey, let's go on a quick vacation to San Fran. She goes, great. So we did that, and that race has been going on for 39 years. And the year that I went, they canceled the swim because they couldn't get the safety vessels out there safely. So they canceled the swim. And you have 3,000 athletes on this one boat, all cramped in, and they had to get us all back in and all back. And that's why you go to do that race, right? To jump on the thing. So I entered the next year. They gave us priority entry. We got to do it the next year. And man, just to get out in there.
Was that a hard? I mean,
it's 1.5 miles, which is shorter than an Ironman swim, but it is. It's just so epic, dude. But you can't feel the water before you jump in. You're jumping in off of a boat. And coming from Texas, I told everybody on that boat, they were like, oh, the water temperature is 54 degrees, and I was like, water freezes at 54 degrees in Texas. That's right. I'm telling you, it's ice. And there was a couple guys in Speedos that did that swim.
So 5 full Ironman, which again, for people who don't know, what's an Ironman? How many?
2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, 26.2 mile run.
Holy mess.
All under 17 hours. You got 17 hours to finish.
And then 17 half, which is half of all that,
half
right?
Ironman, yeah. 70 miles for that one.
And then 10 marathons.
10 marathons.
Golly dang. Holy cow.
When I started, I couldn't run 2 miles.
Really?
Yep.
So what made you go, I'm going to get into doing Ironmans and triathlons and all that?
So I was driving home from work one day. It was spring, and it was just a perfect day, and there was all these runners running through my neighborhood, and they looked so happy and so fit. And I had 2 young kids, and I had a big beer belly and flabby muscles. And I told my wife, I was like, I want to be a runner. I'm going to run. I'm going to go for a run. And I tried to do a 2-mile run to the school and back and couldn't make it.
I mean, you just couldn't
I couldn't finish. My feet started burning. I started itching. I thought I was allergic to running. It just wasn't pleasurable at all. And I started mixing running with podcasts and books, and it made something that was intolerable mixed with something that I really liked. So it made me do it. And I went through, I don't know, probably 50 books that first year. It took me about a year before I liked running.
And so you're just purely doing running?
Purely running. And then a neighbor asked me to do a sprint triathlon, which is really short.
I've done one. The most I've ever done is I did sprint. And what's the one after that? It's
Olympic.
Olympic, yes.
Yeah, that's a good distance. Olympic's a good distance.
I think it was like a mile swim.
It's about a mile swim.
I just remember coming out, and again, you've done Ironmans. I just remember coming out of the swim. I've got a great story about this, by the way. Coming out of the swim, and I almost felt lightheaded because because
you're horizontal and you're hyperventilating. And
because we got on the bike right after that, and I followed a guy, and this was in where was it at? It was in between here and Dallas. I can't remember where it was at. And the water was not like it was a lake, so it was pretty flat. But I was following a guy on the bike, and just kept following and following and following and following.
He took a wrong turn?
And I'm like, no, he didn't take a wrong turn. I'm following. And then I go, all right, I feel like we're getting close, and I haven't seen any turn. No one's coming back. So I called up to him, and I was like, hey, dude, are you in the triathlon? He goes, what triathlon?
That's a great story.
And then I realized I followed the wrong guy. Like, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
I had to go back, take the next turn to get back. I ended up being the second to last person, and it was me and this lady, and the cops that were picking up the cones followed us the whole way in because I was basically an hour and a half behind.
Did you finish?
I did finish.
That's all that matters.
But I
passed everybody on the couch.
Yeah. All right, continue. Sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, a friend asked me to do a sprint, and I bought a bike literally from a guy in a parking lot for $20. And,
are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like a road bike?
It was like kind of a hybrid bike.
Yeah.
And I showed up to do it, learned how to swim barely. Like when I learned to swim at Lifetime, I made it like 2.5 laps in the pool, and a guy asked to share the lane with me, and I was like, bro, you can have it. I'm done. And I fell in love with it. It was a hard sport. And I set a goal of, I'm a big goal guy. I love making lists, and I mapped out my goal. And my goal for the sprint triathlon was 1 hour and 30 minutes. And I came in at 1 hour, 29 minutes and 38 seconds.
Oh,
So
wow.
I beat it by like 22 seconds, and I was hooked.
And so when people say that, because I'm not hooked, I did it. It was fun. I was excited, whatever. Yeah. But what makes, it does seem like the people who do it and become hooked, they become hooked.
Yeah.
What is it that makes you hooked about it?
I think for me, for a lot of guys, you always see a bunch of middle-aged guys in triathlon.
Right.
You have to have time, and you kind of have to have some disposable income because it's a kind of expensive sport. People that played any kind of sports in high school, you lose that. You know, there is not an avenue for that. And I think you crave that competition, and it gives you an ability to compete.
Right.
And you're really just competing with yourself, which is your best competitor. You know, I mean, you just want to beat the guy from yesterday. And you can't go fast when you're 40, but you can go far. I've learned that you can go far. And it's real easy to add another number. Hey, I did 1 mile today. I did 10 miles. I did 11. And you can just keep adding another number. And it's a very satisfying, healthy addiction.
What did it take from when you went from the sprint? What was your next step?
I did an Olympic right after.
Okay. And then after the Olympic?
I signed up for a half Ironman that next year. I broke my shoulder, or I broke my collarbone, and had to take a little time off. It was the first time I rode my bike outside of Greatwood. I left the house and wrecked my bike and flipped over the handlebars. Had to call my wife. I was like, can you come get me? So that was pretty humbling.
Right.
And I told her, I was like, look, I'm going to do this half Ironman, and I'm never going to do a full. Like I have no desire to do a full. The second I crossed that finish line, I looked at my wife and I was like, I'm going to do a full. And she knew it. I mean, she knows me.
But what is that? Like, what's the addiction that makes you go like, oh, I got to go now. I just did that. Now I got to go to the next level.
I think it's just like, why did man climb the mountain? Right. Because it's there.
Right.
And
so you accomplish it, and it was like, I want to go to that next level.
Yeah. You feel like you can do that next thing. You want to see if you can do that next thing. And plus, if you've ever been to an Ironman race, you see people finishing. They're not super athletes. The majority of people are normal looking people. They just have a mental discipline.
Because I've seen these videos of, and I don't know if it's Ironman. I know it's Ironman, but I don't know if it's like, what's the next? Is there any level past Ironman really? Any other? There's
people that do. There's ultra marathons. There's people that do double Ironmans. There's Deca. There's
double Ironmans.
It's ridiculous. I mean, there's however many numbers you want to go. There's people. There's one guy that did an Ironman a day for 100 days straight.
Oh my! But I remember seeing some videos, and I can't remember where it was at, where these guys were coming across the Ironmans, and they're like literally their legs are like wobbling.
Yeah, definitely. You see that at marathons. You see that at Ironman.
Okay.
Definitely so. Yeah. The most inspirational place to be is that last hour of an Ironman, close to midnight, from 11 to midnight, to see those people come in because they've been out there all day, and you'll see people with disabilities, with missing a leg, or blind, or people that are super overweight or battling addiction, and man, they're coming in, and it is so inspiring because they did it. They made it.
So tell us a little about the story. I mean, the biggest story I've heard was that you did this Ironman with someone who was blind.
Correct.
And you went through the whole thing with her, right? So how did you get into that? What was how did that whole process happen? So
the biggest thing for me with this endurance sports is it's very selfish. Like you said, there's always another goal. There's always another goal. But it has opened up doors for me. It's opened up avenues of things that I never would have been introduced to. A buddy of mine guides this blind athlete, and he's been doing it for, oh, look at that. We have the same wedding ring, boo. bro.
Is that Aura?
Yeah, it's an Aura.
So you do it too?
Same.
But you said you're really not in the sleep thing.
Well, I have to see where I'm lacking. So I
Yes.
use it for the heart rate variability.
Yeah.
So, because that tells me when I recover
So
the HRV.
Yeah. So interesting enough. So Eric, another guy on the podcast, I told you last time.
Yep.
He wears this. He wears an Apple Watch, and then he wears what's the other one called?
Whoop.
Whoop. Yes.
Yeah, all of them.
But his whole company, AIM7, basically like monitors everything. So he's kind of trying to figure out what's the best. He says Aura doesn't do the best at like your. I don't know if the heart rate variability, but like calories. It's not measuring. Which, Apple Watch does it much better than that, whatever. But Aura's really good. Aura's really good sleep. I actually just got a sleep number.
The sleep number bed.
Oh, dude. And it is like, I mean, you look at the app on that thing and it's like, it knows when you're moving. The crazy thing is it starts to learn when you move too much, it will start adjusting the bed.
Oh, nice.
To go, oh, you're moving too much. Let me readjust it, make you more comfortable. But it's been, by the way, you got to look into it if you haven't looked
awesome.
at it.
Yeah. We'll do.
Sorry, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So my buddy has been guiding this blind athlete for a couple of years. He has guided her for a half marathon a couple times. Anyway, she was doing Houston Marathon, and they allow you to have two guides for a marathon. One person to guide the athlete, and then one person to kind of run ahead or run behind and just make sure nobody hits you. He called me 9 days before the Houston Marathon and said, "Hey, man, we lost a guide. We need somebody to help guide Kelly. She's trying for Boston." And I'd never met her before, and I was just like, "Oh man, I don't know." He goes, "Man, listen." He goes, "I know your heart. I know what kind of person you are." He goes, "Just meet her." He goes, "This is exactly up your alley." So I went and met her, and I was at the point where I'd already done, I think, 8 marathons at the time, and I was just kind of feeling blah about running another marathon because it's hard. It's hard getting to the starting line. You have to wake up on early and do lots of miles every day. It's difficult. So anyway, I went and met her and just fell in love with her. She's awesome. She's 4'11". She's 55 years old. She's never been able to see since she was 5 years old. And just super determined. And she's great. She's making blind jokes. I ran her into a bush the first time we ran. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And she goes, "That's okay. I didn't see it either." And I was like, "Oh my God." So she is my kind of person. So we did that run together, and she qualified for Boston, which was a year and a half ago.
What?
So we're going to Boston in a week and a half.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, in 10 days we're going to be in Boston running Boston Marathon with
wow.
her. And anyway, we qualified for Boston, and there's like a year before you get in. And I asked her, I said, "Hey, well, what do you want to do? What are we going to do after this?" And she said, she goes, "I really want to be an Ironman." And I didn't even know that was a possibility. I assume that Ironman was going to let you have 2 guides. So I said, yes. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Cause I thought I could guide her with the other guy, Anthony. And Ironman allows you to have 1 guide. You have to have 1 person to guide you through the entire race. And she asked me to be that person. And I said, okay, let me think about it. And I didn't want to overstep my bounds with my buddy, who was like the most humble guy. When the first race we ran, he let me take her over the finish line. Like, he was like, "No, I want you to do the finish line with her." He goes, you gotta do it. So he's just that kind of guy. And he goes, "Look, you need to do this race." It happened to be Florida. She wanted to do Ironman Florida, which I had done the week before or the year before. So I said, "Okay, Kelly, let's do it." And we trained together, and we learned to swim together, to swimming with the blind athlete.
So y'all are practicing together and all that.
She lives in Clear Lake over by NASA, and we would meet once or twice a month. She trains on her own, swimming in the pool. She'll go out to a lake and literally tie herself to the dock with like a rubber band and swim against the rubber band for an hour and a half. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable. And her husband is a saint. He takes her around to do all this stuff all the time. She needed a tandem bike, right? So I told her, I said, "Look, Kelly," I said, "everybody knows you," because I post about all of our stuff on social media. I was like, "Let me throw something out there and see if we can get some kind of help for us to buy this bike." And she had a bike picked out. It was a used bike. She had raced on it before, and the bike was $8,500. And I got canceled at work one day, and I was like, "Okay, this is the day I'm going to do it." So I wrote this long thing out, just basically humbled myself and said, "Hey, look, this is really hard for me to ask for help, but if anybody wants to help us out, get this bike, here you go." Man, I got that money in 24 hours.
Really?
24 hours, we had enough money for that bike.
Wow.
And so we bought the bike, learned to ride a tandem bike, which I'd never done before. And we logged about 400 miles on that bike before the actual race. And then...
so, I mean, how much of the percentage of her training, your training, what you're doing together and all that?
She probably did 80% on her own, and I did 80% on my own. And then we just met, once or twice.
Were you training differently than you did for your other Ironmans?
It was a little different. So the Ironman with her, it was at a much slower pace, which is great for the guide, because you mentally have to be a little more sharp to call things out. When you're swimming with somebody, you're tied to them with a rope.
Yeah.
And she can't see it all, so I would point us in the right direction, and she would just kind of bounce off of me and go back and forth. So I had to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to communicate on the bike. You have to tell everything on the bike, like you're going at 20 miles an hour, and any little thing can be I didn't want to drop her. I didn't want to wreck. And that was my big thing. We never had any issues on the bike. I ran her into the bush on a run, but we've never had any accidents yet. So,
but on the Ironman, you did everything was good.
It was good.
And what did you finish in that time?
So, Ironman is a weird sport. You have you race alongside professionals.
Right.
Just to give you some perspective, they finish in about 8 hours, which is obscene.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yes.
You have 17 hours to finish.
Right.
I have finished anywhere in the 11-hour range to the 14-hour range, and it just depends. You make one error, and it can cost you hours or two.
Of course.
Her and I finished in 16 hours and 28 minutes. So we were literally tied together for all day.
So even with them going, we've got a blind person here, they're still like, you got to stay under 17 hours.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, same cutoffs.
What's the Boston Marathon stuff that you do?
So Boston Marathon, you have to finish under, I think 6 hours is the cutoff.
Yeah.
But to qualify, her time was 4:55, 4 hours and 55 minutes. And we got her in at, I think 4:51 was our first time. Wow. And she's since gotten faster than that. She is extremely dedicated. She is just.
What do you think makes her go, I'm just keep going. I'm gonna
She is she's a former Paralympic athlete. When she was in her 20s, she went to the Olympics twice as a pentathlete and as a runner.
Yeah.
So she's still an athlete in her mind. I don't care if she's 55. That DNA is in there. She has got just incredible dedication. I told you my workout schedule.
Yeah.
That's hers, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just
so say that again, by the way, because you were telling me this before we started. What's your workout schedule?
So every day every week I try to get in 3 bike rides, 3 runs, 1 swim, 2 strength training days or weight days. And then, I do 1 day of yoga on my off day just to try and get it.
Because you are, even talking to my buddy Steve and hearing you, I mean, you're a great dad. And
I appreciate
that. How do you balance being a dad, a husband, and keeping all this training schedule?
I am being a triathlete. It makes you really good at managing your time.
Yeah.
And I'm real type A anyway. It's just early mornings, right? I mean, that's the only time that is truly yours. It's before dad life starts. It's before my wife gets up. From 4 to 5 a.m. That is my time. And the only person that's going to stop that is me. Is if I don't wake up. So I'm usually running around Greatwood or up in my little pain cave on my bike, or I'll go swim at the pool,
What time do you go to bed?
I try to be in bed by 9 and asleep by 10. So I'm usually 10 to 4 is what.
What are you doing from 9 to 10? You just watch TV?
Yeah, I sit
read a book?
I sit with my wife in the bed. She watches a cooking show, and I'm usually watching something on my iPad.
What? Tell me, because you've had this really kind of 360 fitness stuff. What do you feel like? Obviously, you told me that story about you're running and you see these people running, but what drove you to go I'm committed, and then were you following metrics? What made you? You're obviously a super buff, clean guy. What made you stick with it, and how have you monitored and kept consistent with it and not kind of falling back in a sense? Man,
you know what it is? The weird part of that is it's fun for me. Yeah. I don't look at it as a grind. I really enjoy it. I'm a big carrot on the stick guy, and I started this sport when I was 38. I started running. My first Ironman was 40. I have gotten thinner. My waist is where I was when I was right out of high school.
Right.
I've put on more muscle, and I've gotten faster every year. I'm 48 years old, and I'm faster than I was at 38, which is baffling, right? That doesn't make sense. I think those little carrots and the fact that it's fun, I enjoy it. It's not work. If it's not fun, people aren't going to stick with it.
That's awesome. Tell me that other story. One other story you were telling me about earlier, and because I asked you what was your favorite thing about your job, and you told me this crazy story, and that'd be great.
Oh, my job. Well, my favorite thing about my job is that people tell me thank you every day.
Right.
I mean, that's the best part. But you said the best thing that I'd ever done in my career. And I answered with the kind of a crazy thing that happened to me during a race. Kind of crazy story. I don't think there are any coincidences. I think we were supposed to be at this race. We were training for a marathon, and there was a 10-mile run in Sienna Plantation. And
that's where I live at, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, they have the Sienna 10-miler out there.
Yeah.
The night before at 9 p.m., I called a buddy, and I was like, hey, I'm going to do this race tomorrow. We have to run 10 miles anyway. We might as well go get a beer and a T-shirt.
Right.
We'll just, late register. And he goes, okay, I'll do it with you. So we show up to this race, and we're about to start. They're doing the, the Star Spangled Banner and everything. And I was like, oh my God, my coffee just kicked in. I had to run to the bathroom. So
Got it.
yeah. So we go there, and it ends up putting us in the back of the line. So we're in a place that we never would have been in had that not happened. And we're running this race, and we're going a lot faster than we should. And, we keep looking at our watches, and we're like, man, we're doing a good pace. And all of a sudden I hear a sound that nobody would ever want to hear. It's the sound of a human body and a human head hitting the concrete. And I turn around, and about 10 yards behind me, there's a guy on the ground, unconscious. And I run over to him, and doing anesthesia is basically just breathing for people, keeping people alive. That's what we do. And I say, hey, sir, are you okay? And he looks up at me, takes one breath, and he literally dies right there. I mean, he's gone. Eyes roll back. There's nothing there. I check his pulse, no pulse. And I asked my buddy, I said, hey, you know how to do CPR? And he said, yeah, I was a lifeguard. He goes, I can do CPR. I said, okay, I'm going to do mouth to mouth. You do compressions. We do compressions for, I think it was 8 minutes. Oh, we stopped our watch. That was a really important part of the story. We stop our watch. We start doing compressions, and 8 minutes later, the first EMS unit arrives.
Wait, you're doing compressions the entire time?
The entire time. People are running up to us. His wife runs up to us. She's praying over him. Other people are coming up. Funny story, this girl walks up, and she's like, can I help? Can I help? And my buddy needed a break because compressions are hard. Right. And I said, do you know how to do CPR? She goes, no, but I've seen The Office. And if anybody's ever seen The Office, the Staying Alive. Exactly.
Staying Alive, yeah.
So I said, that's great. That'll work. So she starts doing Staying Alive, and she's pumping on his chest. And the first EMS unit arrives, and I said, hey, do you guys have an AED? They said, yeah, we do. And so they bring it out there, and I said, give it to me. I said, I'm an anesthesiologist. I can do it. I put it on there, and I turn it on, and it says, please charge battery.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, unbelievable. And that girl who was doing CPR loses it and starts just yelling at the guys. I'm like, hey, listen. We're here for him. You're not helping. Just take a breath. So we go, I said, you guys have an IV? And they said, yeah, but we can't start it. We're just a basic unit. And I said, okay, bring it to me. So I start an IV. We give him some epinephrine to kind of get his heart going. Nothing. We continue CPR, and we do it for another, I think it was 14 minutes total. That's when the other EMS arrived, and they had an AED. We shocked him once, got his heart back, and he went to have a heart cath. And crazy story about meeting this dude. People take pictures, cameras are everywhere. So they had pictures of us working on him. Somebody posted to Facebook on the running website. His son reached out to me via Facebook and invited me to the ICU where his dad was. And I told my wife, I was just like, man, I don't know, because I had these. Sometimes you do CPR on somebody and it's just not a great outcome. Even in a hospital, right, when you have all the equipment, we didn't have anything out there. I show up at this hospital, and his son, who I'd never met, he saw pictures of me. He sees me from across the waiting room. He comes over to me, and he's like, Scott, and he gives me this big hug, and he's crying, and I'm crying, and he brings me in to meet his dad. And I had no idea this guy was awake. Like, he was awake. He had a breathing tube in. He was confused, but his son goes over there, and the guy spoke Spanish, and his son says, hey, this guy, he goes, I know you can't talk, Dad. He goes, this guy saved your life. He said, if you want to tell him thank you, he goes, squeeze his hand and blink twice. And the guy looks over at me and squeezes my hand and blinks twice. And I just,
I bet.
I lost it. And the next day, his tube was out. He was awake, doing laps around the ICU. I mean, he's perfectly fine now.
And so now, still to this day.
Yeah, he just had a blockage in one artery in his heart. Yeah. And he just happened to have a heart attack right then when he was 20 feet away from me.
How long was that time between when you started to when?
14 minutes.
God.
So, yeah. So, and this, after we after we transferred him to the EMS, when they took him, they got his heart back and they took him. I looked at my buddy. I was like, okay, you ready? And we started our watches back and we finished the race. We still had 4 miles left.
Oh my
And
gosh.
bro, we were so out of breath. Like we had used up all of our epinephrine on that guy. And,
Wow.
But it was just incredible. Like,
That's crazy.
God put you where he wants you, right?
All right. Hey, by the way, drink of choice that Scott chose today. We do this every time. He did the Balvenie Double Wood, age 12. I am not a Scotch whiskey guy because I don't like peaty.
Uh-huh. This isn't too peaty.
But this is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a 9.1 on that. Good job, Scott. Thank you.
That's a scale of 10?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Last couple questions. Two things is I always end with what's called rapid fire, where I ask you a bunch of questions.
Okay.
You can give me one word answers.
All right.
Steve, our familiar buddy here, he cannot answer it one word, but that's okay. What's your what would you say is your like top favorite books that have been inspiring? Books, podcasts, whatever it might be, that's been inspiring for you to help you kind of. I mean, you're obviously an aspiring person. You've continued to grow. You've done some great things for your life, other people. What would be some books?
Podcast is a great one. It's 5 minutes. It comes out twice a week. It's called My Unsung Hero.
Okay.
It's from NPR, and the guy literally interviews people, and they talk about strangers that have done a kind act for them in their life. And man, it just reminds you that people are kind and how much these small little random acts go for these people that talk about them 20 years later.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it for anybody that has any doubts about the human race or humanity. Listen to this podcast. It's 5 minutes.
By the way, do you follow on Instagram Good News Movement?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, dude,
yeah. Good stuff. I love that's yeah. I love that stuff.
That same genre.
Same exact stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
Love
else?
that stuff. Book wise, I love Goggins. I love all that stuff. I mean, I think the guy's pretty extreme, but there's definitely nuggets of wisdom in there. I just don't think you have to take it to that level, but I love a lot of that stuff.
Any books?
Oh, man, I used to be big in books. Now I haven't.
Podcasts.
Yeah, I'm just mainly podcast now.
Yep.
It just seems more digestible.
Okay, so we're gonna jump right into rapid fire, and these are some weird questions, man.
Okay.
Sometimes, so you just got to go with it.
All right, I'm gonna go with it.
Gives a chance for people to know you. Where's the furthest place you've ever traveled away from where your main home is?
I went to Amsterdam as a kid. That's probably the furthest way place. As an adult, we haven't gone really far, honestly. Went to Haiti with my wife. We did everything.
One bucket list item you haven't completed yet.
Boston Marathon.
What you're about to do, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's crazy. You have any tattoos?
I do. I have 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're not visible. I'm not going to ask where
Yeah.
they're at. You're good. Work or play?
Both.
Cats or dogs?
I have both.
Favorite Disney movie?
Oh, God, that's so tough. The football movie with Denzel. Why can't I think of the name?
Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans. Thank you very much.
What makes you most angry? This is not a one-word question, so you might have to answer it in one sentence, but what makes you most angry?
Apathy.
I like that. If you could spend time with any person in the world, who would it be?
Probably my family.
What are your typical work hours?
7 to 3 usually.
Hang on, let me get this other one. What's your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
I like that. Most people aren't that way. All right.
Yeah.
And here's my last question. I always ask. It's a hard question, but here it is. You have 24 hours.
Okay.
Money is no object. Time is no object. So if you need to fly somewhere to get somewhere, you can do it. It is whatever you want to spend, you can spend it. Where would you go? What would you do? Who would you spend it with?
Oh, man. Okay. When my wife and I, before we had kids, we lived in Los Angeles. We had this loft, this 1-bedroom loft in downtown Los Angeles. And we had all our friends over there for parties all the time. And we had this massive hat rack in the front door that had like 30 or 40 crazy party hats.
Oh,
and
that's
every time
awesome.
people would come over, they would put those hats on. I would go back to that and just have all those people back over.
For 24 hours.
24 hours, just have a 24-hour party with all those people again.
That's awesome.
Because that's just something you don't get to do as a...
That's the most unique answer I've heard. That's awesome. Cool. So if people want to look you up, where you at on, and we'll put this in our show notes. And all that.
Instagram, I'm I sedate you for my job. ISED, the number 8 and the letter U, and that's really about it. I'm on Twitter, but I don't post. I scroll TikTok, but I've only made a few of them. I'm going to see Taylor Swift with my daughters here in a couple of weeks, so I'm a huge Swiftie. I'm going to have fun with that.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Scott, for joining us. Hey,
enjoyed it.
And thanks for great stories. And dude, you're a very uplifting person, so I appreciate you pushing us all in the right direction.
Looking forward to it, man.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks again for the closing podcast. See you guys.